Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Northside Baseball. As we go into the end of the year, it seems like the Cubs are not done beefing up their bullpen as well as their fielders. So, without further ado, we'd like to reintroduce to you the wonderful Caleb Thielbar and bring back somebody into the MLB that raises a lot of questions that I'm sure Brandon is going to want to talk about. Tyler Austin, coming back from Japan, of all places. So let's just get right into it. Brandon, what are your thoughts? I'll ask you first about Caleb Thielbar because I think that's the lesser of two evil. Not that Caleb Thielbar is evil here, but I know you have a lot to say about Tyler Austin.
Yeah, I Thielbar makes a lot of sense. He's an older guy. He's 38 years old, but he was great for the Cubs last year in his role. Again, he's had mixed seasons. He was not good for the Twins in 2024. But again, the Cubs really helped him out last year. He pitched a little bit more to contact, started really limiting walks like he used to do earlier in his career. And again, it was just nice to see. Again, he's more of a lefty specialist. Again, it's what at 38 years old, that's just kind of what his role has become. But again, he's really effective in that role, and so it's nice to see him at it again, and especially with Hobie Milner, who we've talked about in a previous video. The Cubs now have a couple of lefties who they're not they're not going to be the high leverage guys in the bullpen. They're not going to challenge Daniel Palencia for the closer role, but again, we knew that the Cubs needed to rebuild the bullpen this year. Phil Maton was a really nice signing. And overall, I'm very pleased with Caleb Thielbar coming back in 2026.
Yeah, it's like you said, it's a slow build up here. He was a really great looking guy last year, and I'm glad that we have him back. Like you said, he wasn't the most amazing guy on the Twins, but like I've said, for the past few years that we've been with Northside Baseball, we always fall off the tracks in the last few innings. And having a lefty, pitcher near the end of the last few innings, especially when it's Caleb Thielbar, I think is a great move for the Cubs. So, bravo to the front office for bringing him back for next season. Now, I know this is not a conversation that you're really looking forward to here, but let me get your thoughts on Tyler Austin.
Yeah, I'll note that the Tyler Austin move is very fresh at the time of recording, and I'm trying to sit with it and make peace with it. But I am frustrated with this move. I think again, I mentioned this to you, before we hopped on camera, Ethan, but had the Cubs already made a move, they weren't going to sign Pete Alonso, but for example, like signing a Pete Alonso or Dylan Cease or what have you, this move would really be easy to swallow because it would be a very forgettable move. It would just be, hey, they signed, again, Tyler Austin was a former top prospect a decade ago, didn't really hack it in the major leagues. He spent the last 6 seasons in Japan having some success. He's had 20 plus home runs 3 times. And he's always been good at hitting left-handed pitching, which is why the Cubs brought him in. He'll probably platoon with Michael Busch at first base. But again, as where we stand right now, he's just another one in just a long line of Cubs moves that aren't enough. Again, the Phil Maton move I thought was great. I really like Caleb Thielbar. I think Hobie Milner was a very savvy signing. But none of those guys, besides maybe Maton, are going to really help bridge the gap from the rotation to the end of the bullpen. In terms of being a setup guy for Daniel Palencia. And Tyler Austin is it just again plenty of players in recent years have, struggled in Major League Baseball, gone to done their Asian swing in Japan or Korea, turned their careers around and come back and really succeeded. And I'm not putting it past Tyler Austin to do that as well. It's just, again, we saw it this past year. The Cubs bench was terrible. It was the worst unit on the team by a mile. Gage Workman was terrible. Vidal Brujan was terrible. John Birdie was bad. Justin Turner wasn't any really, really wasn't that good. And it's just like, it's frustrating because the Cubs bench does not have a lot of open spots. Miguel Amaya is going to be, the 1B catcher to Carson Kelly. Owen Casey's probably going to be on the bench as a reserve outfielder. And then maybe like Moises Ballesteros is going to be there too as like a bat first option. So is Tyler Austin really going to be, the reserve infielder now? It's just, again, trying to keep, just a holistic picture of this. The offseason is only about halfway done. And for $1 million, 1.25 million, I think is what the final contract number is. This is a signing that is really, really low risk. The Cubs can always cut bait if this doesn't work out, but it really feels like the Cubs again are just picking, at the margins when something bigger is needed. They're trying to paint the black when they just got to throw the fastball down the middle, and that's what I'm frustrated about.
And I think that's completely understandable. Look, Brandon, you have been a Cubs fan for a very, 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 very long time. And, I think the thing to really focus on here is that, like you said, it's only like a 1 million some odd dollar deal. So, it's not like the Cubs have spent a huge amount of money on him. He will probably be a Michael Busch, backup, which, if he does fall prone to injury, which every Cubs player somehow does at some point, like I said, always there's a hit out on the Cubs somewhere in Chicago. But I think it's a fair deal to, come through after him being so absent in the MLB. And what I will say, as you kind of already alluded to, is we're only halfway through the winter at this point. So there could be a surprise somewhere in the front office that Jed Hoyer could say, look, we're ready to spend some money. It is unlikely just based on the Cubs track record, but it's not impossible. And I'm a gambling man personally. So I'd like to believe that there's a free agent out there who might just end up in Chicago. Again, there's been all these rumors that Alex Bregman might show up, in Chicago and be in, blue, red, and white. So who knows what could happen? And, I'm just going to focus on the fact that the winter isn't over yet, and spring we're not even close to spring training. So I'd like to be an optimist here. We're not gonna positive thoughts, Brandon. That's what we're gonna end on here. But with that, we'd love to hear your comments in the comment section below. Are you happy that Caleb Thielbar is coming back? What's your thoughts on Tyler Austin joining the team? As always, we'd love to hear your comments, and as always, we'll be responding to every single one.